Next, you're tuned into the all new Action One Network. Turn up your volume.
All right, everybody. This is your host, Shenga, SG2 on Space, episode number 50. So today, here in the States, it is October 31st, Halloween, which for many of us could be quite spooky. I haven't noticed anything amiss myself, but I figure in our topic today, we're talking about some really strange things. I'm also going to have a associate of mine on. I believe he is going to call in. And he's a very interesting guy. I'll introduce him in a little bit after he calls in. But first, let's do the intro. SG2 on Space, episode 50. Follow me, facebook.com/The Shen Show. Yes, that used to be the name. Fortunately, I still can't change it. So facebook.com/The Shen Show. Here at the studio of Action One Media Group. That is at, follow them at wearea1.com. And on YouTube, if you search, you will find a playlist of all the shows, almost all the shows. And that search would be SG2 on Space. All right. And last, but definitely not least, you guys should support me if you want this to, be better quality at Patreon, patreon.com/SG, the number 2, SG2 on Space. And this is something I feel like I haven't iterated enough since. All right, so go donate. That'd be fun. I'm going to do more stuff. All right, so book intro, right? I got this book from the library. In fact, I got 2 books, but let's talk about this one first. This one is called Unconventional Flying Objects. A former NASA scientist explains how UFOs really work. So there's a lot of books out there that talks about, sightings of UFOs. But how many really talk about the technology that could be behind it? Well, this book does. So I'm just going to read a little bit about from the back. All right. Let me see. Paul Hill was a well-respected NASA scientist when, in the early 1950s, he had a UFO sighting. Soon after, he built the first flying platform and was able to duplicate the UFO's tilt-to-control maneuvers. Official policy, however, prevented him from proclaiming his sightings. I was destined, says Hill, to be unidentified as the flying objects. For the next 25 years, Hill acted as an unofficial clearinghouse at NASA, collecting and analyzing sightings reports for physical properties, propulsion possibilities, dynamics, etc. To refute claims that UFOs defy the law of physics, he had to make technological sense of the unconventional object. And last paragraph. After his retirement from NASA, Hill finally completed his remarkable analysis. This book, published posthumously, presents his findings that UFOs obey, not defy, the laws of physics. Vindicating his own sighting and thousands of others, he proves that UFO technology is not only explainable, but attainable. I clearly have not read this whole thing, but it'd be cool to read it. All right. Okay, typically I don't present another book, but I will because I thought this was really awesome. So as you guys know, I also write. I write poetry, short stories, whatnot. In fact, since this is my show, I might as well tell you, if you want to read my poetry or some other works, you can go to facebook.com/Shenge Creative, SHENGE Creative. Okay. So, writers could improve as well. So I actually got this book from the library called The Hidden Machinery by Margot Livesey. I don't know if that's how you say it. The Hidden Machinery. But anyways, this is entirely a book of essays on writing, which is, I think, pretty fabulous. All right. So I am learning quite a bit from reading it. So she goes through, talks about various passages of writing and how to better write it. All right. So I'm not going to dwell too much on that, but if you guys write or have interest in improving your writing, this would be a good book. Okay. So with that, let's see here. Do we want to go on break? Do we want to bring somebody on? But I will tell you this. Actually, you know what? Let's see here. Let me just check if Leonard's able to call in here. He's not on. So while we're trying to figure that out,
You sitting on the internet all day. Why not go ahead and fill out our survey? Man, you still here? Go on and subscribe. Man, you still here? Go ahead and fill out our survey.
And, some of the other things you got going on.
Absolutely. So thank you for having me. I feel like I'm in the presence of like celebrities. Y'all real fans to me.
It's just the shades, man. It's the shades.
So I think like 2000.
On the internet all day. Why not go ahead and fill out our survey? Man, you still here? Go on and subscribe. Man, you still here? Go ahead and fill out our survey.
Growing up as a black kid in New Jersey, all I ever wanted to do was be a pro athlete. All of my role models were black athletes. And every time I would stare out the window and look at the sky and wonder what I'd be in the future, it always had to do with me catching some crazy football and scoring a touchdown. When it came to the point that I was told that I would not be able to play on an organized sports team for the rest of my life, it was something that I really didn't even know how to stomach in the moment. And I remember walking out of my cardiologist's office and just sitting in the hallway and breaking down for a few minutes just because it was something that I just couldn't plan for and couldn't account for. And I realized that in that moment, my entire life was going to be changed. And all of those dreams and hopes and aspirations that I had were going to go out of the window.
All right, so we are back. Episode 50, SG2 on Space here at Action One Media. As noted, hopefully you're watching it at facebook.com/The Shen Show, the old name, or on YouTube, SG2 on Space. So today, since it's Halloween here, October 31st to be precise, 2019 still. Wow, the years pass by. I figured I'd talk about some, some weird stuff, but why don't we bring Mr. Leonard Kramer on as well? So it's a short background. Leonard also is in the same building as me, at the Boeing building. And he's a very interesting guy, aerospace engineer, also a artist, and
who knows what else?
I don't know. I mean, he's just pretty creative, does interesting things. So, Leonard, are you on?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I'm not
You
sure if I
can't hear
hear
me?
you, but I recall we had a conversation about airships last week, and you drew a parallel. So we're going to start talking about that. Actually, you drew a parallel between airships and the space shuttle. So,
Correct.
in terms of the fact that I believe it was because, in terms of airships, back in the 1920s and early 30s, we had this, by we, I mean everybody, anticipated that to be the future.
The world, yes.
Say, right now, 2019, instead of riding airplanes, we will be riding airships going everywhere, right? Of course, that did not happen. Similarly, in regards to the space shuttle, when we did that, the original concept was to, run that like at least a few times a month. Reusability, right? And we'll get a space. Of course, that never happened as well. So in both cases, we had these visions of technologies transcending in the future, which did not happen. So, that's pretty much what I got out of from our, conversation in terms of that. So,
Yeah.
do you have any insight?
Insight? Well,
Okay.
I mean, that was
Well,
kind
let's see
of
here. I'm sure you're saying something, but
you
the other
can't
thing
hear
that I recalled you saying, I believe was, actually, first of all, let me guys give you, the viewers, a backdrop on what airships are, right? So you guys have seen blimps in the sky and all that jazz. Goodyear blimp, right? So that is not what I mean when I say an airship. When I say an airship, when we're talking about that, we meant actual valid ways of transportation, and this was taken very seriously in the early 20th century. So one of the most common ones was, one of the most notable ones was the Zeppelin, right? And actually, back in the early 20th century, you could take cruise liners, I suppose, to cross the ocean, ships, which could take months, or you take airships, which doesn't take months. All right, and those are typically fairly luxurious as well. And so Zeppelin, say, was a German company, and American companies built it as well. And you go from, say, Europe somewhere to America and back, right? And you can really go anywhere. So in fact, Leonard, I believe, was telling me that when some of the buildings were built in New York City during that era, for instance, the Empire State Building, they anticipated airships to be able to dock there. So they actually had a platform near the top so that the airship could dock at the Empire State, which is pretty amazing when you think about it today. Like skyscrapers as pretty much docking ports for flying up. Yeah, that's interesting, right? But that was a concept back then. Now, it wasn't just civilian civilian, what do you call it? Airliners? Airship liners? I don't know what you call those. That had that. The military also, had a lot of interest in those because they presumed that airships could be used for transporting stuff. It could be used as aircraft carriers. Now, when we think of aircraft carriers now, we think of these giant ships in the ocean carrying, airplanes. Airplanes could take off, right? But imagine if you could have a floating platform in the sky carrying a bunch of small airplanes that could fly off. The Navy actually built a couple of those, and they worked to a degree. They were humongous, and they were able to have these aircrafts that would take off, right, from underneath the giant Zeppelin thing, the airship. So unfortunately, those had a lot of issues, and I forget what the name was, but there were two of the most massive ones the Navy built. Both of them basically killed people in that they were very hard to control. One of them sunk in this storm, so it had a bunch of issues even before then. But its final death day was when it went into the storm. It was just winds, right, and couldn't control it. The back rudder, since airships, that you still need that to control which direction you go to. That just flew off or whatever. And then so what ended up happening is I crashed in the ocean, and pretty much everybody died except for 3 people, which was pretty dismal. And then its twin, which was built pretty much exactly the same, that also suffered a terrible fate as well, although not quite as dramatic. So on the civilian side, you guys have people have probably heard of the Heisenberg, and that disaster, Heisenberg, sorry, not Heisenberg, uncertainty principle. I don't know. So Heisenberg, the disaster that occurred on May 6, 1937, in Manchester Township, New Jersey, United States, and that was the LZ-129 Heisenberg. Caught fire, destroyed during its attempt to dock with its mooring mast at the Naval Air Station, Lakehurst. There were 97 people on board, 36 passengers, 61 crewmen, 36 fatalities, which was 13 passengers and 22 crewmen. If you saw the pictures, you would have expected everyone to die. These things are pretty slow moving, so not everybody died, but it was still pretty bad. Since photography, there was definitely black and white photography, and so they cover it, and newsreel covered it, and it looked crazy. I mean, it was made of hydrogen. Okay, so hydrogen ignites. Yeah. So, any case, so ignited, blew up in a fireball. It was just horrendous, and people were like, "Hey, we are not gonna do this anymore." Because it is, it basically marked the end of the airship era in terms of civilian transportation. And as I was saying, that the Navy was trying to do it too, and then there were a bunch of disasters there, which did not work out very well. All right, so that was the anticipated future until 1937, right? May 6, 1937. I think that was the death blow with that. Heisenberg disaster. So in terms of the space shuttle, which I'm going to relate to. Okay, so airships is not something we typically talk about on this show, but why not foray into it a bit. So in terms of the space shuttle, so first of all, what is a space shuttle? A space shuttle is retired, okay, since I believe 2011. So the space shuttle was meant to be, so the first flight was on April 12th, 1981. So the space shuttle was meant to be a pretty much completely reusable orbital spacecraft, that goes into say orbit around the Earth, and then it could come back and could do it a bunch of times every month. So the idea was, kind of like an airplane, right? Do you guys like ride an airplane and then the airplane blows up and then you got to build a whole new airplane? No, that's not what happens. That's why flights are actually pretty cheap. You pay a couple $100, you can really go anywhere, right? So, well, maybe not quite anywhere. It depends on your flight, where you're going. But point is that was the idea for the space shuttle, that you could do that. Now, it never reached that stage. So our dream, or NASA's dream, which I would extend that to the whole public's dream, back in the 1970s, was that you would build a space shuttle and it will earmark the next revolution in space travel. Like, you would be able to set so much stuff up in so little time. Everything's going to be great. If I lived back in that era, which I did not, I was born, what? I'll just tell you guys, 1986. All right, so I think I look younger than the year I was born. But anyhow, point is, if I was living back in that era, I would have assumed, hey, that's what's going to happen. Except it didn't, of course. There were a lot of complications, and what ended up happening is that it was only partially reusable, and clearly it carried more risk. You heard of the Challenger and Columbia disasters. And so what ended up happening is that it took months of preparation in between flights. So it was never able to, launch more than, a few times a year. And even then it was really risky, and it required tens of thousands of people maintaining it. So in no way was it similar to an airplane in terms of the amount of effort and the risk it posed. All right. It did last 30 years. So that is, I think that's about the span that airships lasted, if I'm not around there, perhaps. So now, am I hopeful these things are going to come back in the future? Yes, I am. I think technology sometimes goes around in a circle. What I mean is this. Something may not work in its first incarnation due to, economics or poor technology in certain aspects of it. But then people will think about it and be like, yeah, this makes sense. For instance, using rockets to get in space, really, even reusable rockets in some ways, doesn't make that much sense. All right. So the ideal way is to have something like a space plane that can go up and then come back, right? Which is what a number of companies are working on. In fact, and the military as well, as always. So I think, for me personally, I think the future in terms of the economics lies in definitely reusable, I would presume, horizontal takeoff vehicles, takeoff and landing vehicles, kind of like an airplane, except it can go into space. So versus our present day gigantic rockets. All right. So, in any case, do I hear somebody online?
Yeah, it's Leonard. They finally got me through.
Leonard, finally. It's glad to, I think I pretty much summarized everything you're going to say, right?
I don't know. I hadn't actually been listening. We've been struggling trying to figure out how to get the how to get me on, but I'm on now. What were you talking about? Airships? Is that what we're going to, like Zeppelins and stuff?
Okay, well, I was basically expressing what I knew, which was about, so to reiterate for Leonard here, so I was talking about Zeppelins and the space shuttle, about how both of them, during their era, people presumed them to be the future when they did not turn out to work as anticipated, and there were a bunch of disasters, and so that did not materialize.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess, the thing about me is I'm kind of like, I told you I'm kind of into steampunk.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So it's the vision about taking yourself at a certain point in time and then trying to imagine what the future would be like given what you know at the time. And so, say, I'll take you back to the 1850s, say, and you only know about steam power. You don't know about electricity. You don't know about these other things. So you try to envision what the future's going to be like. So sometimes when you look at literature and people writing about the 1920s and the 1930s, they have this vision of the airship, the Zeppelin, as the wave of the future. That's how air travel is going to be, right?
Right.
And it turned out it didn't really work. I mean, it didn't work both because of the safety issues, but also because of the technological. The technology overcame it. With the jet engine started coming online and so forth. But mostly, I think that they abandoned Zeppelins because they kept having accidents, especially in the United States. The Navy kept having accidents with them, and then there was the big famous Hindenburg that exploded.
I actually mentioned both the Navy and the Hindenburg. So, go on in terms of just go on.
But the vision of the Zeppelin was like a luxurious ship that you would fly in, and they were flying from Germany all the way to South America, and it was a very expensive trip for very high class wealthy people,
right?
So forth, and so it's it kind of captures my imagination in a lot of respects from that point of view. But actually, one of the things that happened was in 1929, 1930, the stock market crashed, and we had this depression, and the world was kind of like upended, and that kind of put a kibosh on what was going on in the future. But the parallel with the space shuttle is it's a criticism of the space shuttle, really, because the space shuttle was envisioned in the early 70s under the Nixon administration when they started winding down Apollo. We're going to have this airplane, and that was the vision. It's an airplane that would fly into space, and then it would come back down and land like an airplane, and you could reuse it over and over again. And so there was like a vision that everybody bought into, and it really didn't. It was technologically an amazing vehicle, an amazing accomplishment technologically. You can't take anything away from that. But we're not making shuttles now. We're not going to do shuttles anymore. We learned really. Nobody really wants to say it, but we learned not to do that. Each one was almost $500 million for each flight, something like $450 million every time it flies.
Wow.
And a lot of the reason for pushing the shuttle was military. The Air Force or whoever. There's another organization. There are several organizations that are involved in intelligence. Trying to satellite intelligence, and they want access to space to be able to go and bring things back and take things up, so forth. But so a lot of the impulse for pushing the shuttle was military. But after Challenger, we didn't do any more military flights. I guess maybe a lot of people don't know that there were. I don't know how many. There were several, maybe 3 or 4 classified missions for the shuttle prior to 86. Is that when?
Yeah,
Challenger?
that's when Challenger incident happened. So
yeah,
that's rather interesting. I'm not sure if a lot of people knew that. So yeah, you're drawing this parallel between what the shuttle was anticipated to be versus, say, the airship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So and they had these a couple of spectacular accidents that really confronted people with the enormity of or the danger. So those parallels. Also, another thing is, the Zeppelins were so expensive that really they needed a national government in order to sponsor them. They needed to be subsidized. I know that there was a company in Germany called Zeppelin.
Yes.
That was the name of the company, and they operated civilian flights from, as I say, from Europe to South America and to North America. That was what the Hindenburg was carrying passengers.
Right.
But anyway, that was something that occurred to me.
So, do you think well, let me hear your views since you didn't hear it. Do you think these technologies could come back? Maybe not in the previous incarnation, but like, for instance, let's take an example of airships. Do you think that could come back? Okay. I am not sure if you heard my question. Mine.
Yeah.
What's that?
Go ahead.
Okay, I was saying, you had that, back in the early 20th century, there were these steampunk visions of the future. Now, granted, we have airplanes now, which, but do you think airships could still play a role in the future? Like, could there be something like that?
I don't know, Shin. I don't know that there's been various proposals for that you read about from time to time, but I'm really not an authority on the practicality of airships, so I kind of doubt it.
Right. There was since you're, I don't know if you read this thing, but a while back I was reading something about floating platforms on Venus. So have you heard of that? Like did you?
Yeah, there's been balloons that have been flown in the Venus atmosphere. Hold on, I got some trick-or-treaters here.
Okay, not sure what's going on there, but
no, I've just got trick-or-treaters here. It's okay. We're good to go. You're all on the air, by the way. All right.
Okay. Well, all right. That's interesting.
What do you want me to do? You want me to just not answer the door? When the trick-or-treaters come, you gotta do something.
That is extremely true, which I am very glad that I'm not there at the.
No.
But happy Halloween for anybody who's out trick-or-treating or watching the show later, and it's like, all right, that's cool. I used to do that as a kid, go around, knock on doors, and get candy. Haven't done that in a while. So Leonard, has anything strange happened to you? I'm curious, since you've lived an interesting life, I'm sure. Since it is Halloween, I would like to know if you have personally experienced or heard something that's weird that you want to share.
I was struck by lightning one time.
All right, tell me about that.
This was when I was in college, maybe early '80s, I think, and I was driving to a friend's house in Baltimore.
Uh-huh.
And I was getting out, and it was like Halloween time. It wasn't quite. I don't think it was Halloween night, but it was around that period.
Okay.
And I was getting out of the car, and there's this thunderstorm coming up, and the house was a large house. Actually, it was a dude that rented rooms out to college students. He was like a wealthy guy. I don't know what anything else about him.
Right.
But I was getting out of the car, and the chimney of his house got struck by lightning,
mm-hmm.
and the ground current, like passed through my body. I got shocked basically, and I guess the current flowed up, through from one leg to the other leg, and I had in those days I had one of those liquid crystal watches, digital watches when they were first coming online.
Not really, but go on.
No, you don't know what I'm talking about. Well, it was it had black numbers on, and it kind of like normalized and I could taste some kind of metallic sensation in my mouth, but I didn't die. And I did not lose consciousness, but I was never the same again. So, or so they.
Yeah. So after you got struck by lightning, did you gain some powers or some mental perception shift? You're not the same anymore.
So, I think so. I have a good memory now, and anyway, that's a true story. I got struck by lightning. That was my experience getting struck by lightning.
Okay, that's really interesting. I can't say if I've ever experienced that. There was a guy who was they say he was cursed or something because he got struck by lightning like 7 times in his life, which is crazy. Like every time.
Yeah, he probably needs to be. Yeah.
So you've been struck by lightning only once?
Only once, and I wasn't really struck by it. I just experienced the current from I was standing, and then the lightning hit the house, and then the current through the ground, I presume, and then I intercepted some of it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm glad you're alive. So that really that's pretty important. I think for you. I'm sure this world would have been very different otherwise. So, what about anybody else that you may know of who's experienced something weird?
Experienced something weird?
Yeah, why not?
Nothing's coming to my mind right this moment. I mean, I guess I have met a lot of people.
That's fine. So, let me ask you this, Leonard. What would you like to experience that that's a little out there?
I'm
presuming you don't want to be hit by lightning again. So, so what would you like to see?
Go ahead, Shan.
So my question is, what would you like to experience or see that, that'd be like, hey, that was interesting or strange?
Some of the things I kind of don't want to mention, but I would like to. I would like to experience like a séance or some kind of paranormal type of thing like that. So far, I haven't really. I have spent time down in Galveston talking to people who claim the entire area is haunted, and I can understand that because in the 1900s there were 3,000 people who perished.
Right.
And so when you walk around, you do get a kind of, I don't know if you noticed this, when you walk around in Galveston down on the Strand, there's a spooky kind of sensation that you get. And if you go into some of those places and talk to people, they'll tell you about strange experiences, ghosts that they've seen. There's one dude that makes jewelry down there, and he swears that when he puts his tools away for the night, a lot of times he'll come back downstairs in the morning and all of his tools are scattered all over the place. And they attribute that to the ghosts of the people, thousands of people. When you go down there, there's like particles of dead bodies there because they cremated. They actually, I don't know if you know the story that
I don't.
They collected the bodies and they sent them out on barges and they came back. They washed back up on the beach, and so they ended up doing large. I'm sure they were respectful and everything like that, but you can't have bodies,
right,
laying around. So Galveston is kind of a spooky place. So I do feel something when I go there. There's also some pretty cool cemeteries and such like that.
Are you saying
Oh.
there's cool cemeteries in Galveston, or just in
Yeah,
general?
I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. I used to go and hang out in cemeteries. I took a date to a cemetery one time. I've
Wow,
checked that
Leonard,
off the list.
I am somehow not surprised. So myself, I'll tell you, I've gone to cemeteries by myself. I mean, I don't know, it feels nice and peaceful hanging out with people who's died. But the date part, no, haven't done that yet. So that's interesting. Um, so yeah, no, like, you
Hmm.
seances. That is something where
Yeah.
you want to experience but haven't yet. You said
I have not experienced not a real seance.
seance, right? Okay, I'm gonna tell you that for everybody on air, you might as well know anyway. So I myself have gone to see a psychic in the past, a number of years back, and I didn't ask any particularly like meaningful question. I don't think, which in hindsight was, I wish I did, but in any case, but there was definitely some doubt beforehand. I know there's a lot of quacks out there. For myself, though, this particular lady, she said a few things which turned out to be very true. And not to go into too much detail, but she said something about me, which I was like, hey, wait a minute. You shouldn't know this. That's what I was thinking in my head. And then the other thing was, so she read my, she did all this through reading tarot cards. And the other thing that she said was there's going to be some kind of party or event that you're going to attend or maybe hold, and you need to be careful on what you say and what you do. And then I was like, oh, really? I mean, yeah, probably, yeah, whatever. And then I really wish I listened to her because I made a huge fool out of myself. So the
Really?
point is that this, I definitely think there are people who are able to do that. This particular lady, and who knows, there might be other ones as well. She also said that she could, like, if you pay her like, I guess more money, she could do this crystal reading, I think, where she could find out who you would marry or who you should be with in the future. Assuming that that's what you want to know, or some other deep question like that. So I never did that, but I was like, this is interesting. So anyways, I'm just sharing one of my, I don't know if you call this paranormal, but one of these experiences. So I'm I'm pretty sure there's things out there. I don't know how these people are able to do it, but I don't know. They're hooking up to something.
Well, I always say that I'm open to that. I haven't really seen anything that I can't explain, but trust me, I'm open to that.
Right.
I want to experience it.
So Leonard, one of the things that this particular psychic, I saw her back in 2011, I think. Either 2010 or 2011, but she told me that people who do not have an open mind, she can't get through to them. Like, it just doesn't work. So you have to keep an open mind. So like, for instance, when she did the tarot card readings, if it's a tarot card, or however you say it, if somebody doesn't believe in it, like, it's like, oh, this is all just dumb stuff, then she's not going to be able to give you an accurate reading. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, which I find kind of interesting in that. So, but the reason I believe this was legit was because there were very few questions asked. There was basically, if I recall correctly, it was like, I think it was just like my name, and she had no idea who I was when I walked in. My name, and then that was, and maybe one other information. That was it. And then it was just flipping the cards. So
yeah.
It was pretty wild. We're gonna have to take a short break. I'm gonna reveal something also really strange that happened to me. But we'll take a short break. We'll be back. Stay on.
You sitting on the internet all day. Why not go ahead and fill out our survey? Man, you still here? Go on and subscribe. Man, you still here? Go ahead and fill out our survey.
Yo, we back at it again, baby.
What?
Get into action.
3.
Get in the action.
Tell me what is the deal, tell me what is the deal.
So I challenge you today to start strong.
Get in the action.
Tell me what is the deal. Cause I'm calling for you.
Get in the action.
Can you feel that? See, I'm calling for you. Can you feel that? See, I'm calling for you. Can you feel that? See, I'm calling for you. Say how you really feel.
This is a Wiz production.
When the 7 trumpets sound, we gon' start the revolution. When we turn up, we shut it down. We are skywalkers. The spheres of my Kabbalah, illuminated properly in sight, shows the man in universe and the creator's gift of life. When the earth collides with every piece of star from afar, there's a higher probability to find out where we are. Trapped in time and space, lost in this dimension. 7 sins committed daily. Never did I fail to mention this the rapture. I capture every piece of star power.
Okay, we are back. This is episode 50, SG2 on space here at the Action One Media Group studio. So, we've been talking about airships, space shuttles, how those two were anticipated to be the future and not. And since it's Halloween, I decided to go in the direction of something weird. We have online, or on the phone rather, Leonard Kramer, who is besides being an aerospace engineer, very experienced. He's also a sci-fi fan, steampunk enthusiast, painter, artist. I don't know. How else would you describe yourself? Actually, I'm curious.
Oh, I just live for the moment. I don't know. You know, I've been taking a class in German longsword fencing.
What?
German longsword fencing.
You're a German longsword? Okay.
Yeah, I have a German longsword. It's a martial art.
Do you dress up in armor?
No, don't be silly.
Well, I have a friend who I don't know what you call it, Society of Anachronistic whatever. They dress up in armor and hit each other's swords. That's all I know.
Anachronistic. Yeah, I saw some of them at the Renaissance Fair about what was it, 3 weeks ago. Boy, I could. They're not trained. I am a trained swordsman. I can, I can walk the walk, as it were.
You're a trained swordsman?
I am trained in the art of German longsword fencing, if you want to call it fencing.
Where do you do that, Leonard? That's awesome.
There's a it's called Sword to Sword. It's over on the west side off of Blaylock on I-10.
Uh-huh.
And people should go out and you can just show up, and I think they have a Groupon kind of thing where you can do that.
It's called Sword to Sword, and
Sword to Sword.
And you go there. I mean, do you go there like frequently?
Yeah, Sunday mornings. I've been on a hiatus recently because I'm taking a painting class at Rice in the evening, and so I'm just like doing one thing at a time. But you can just go there and learn about how to use a longsword.
I think I just found it. Sword to Sword is located at 1212A Cedar Post Lane. So, wow, that's interesting. Okay, so
you thought I was making that up? What?
Yeah, but so you also do painting. I think I saw one of your artworks recently. It's a woman, right? I think. I don't know who it is.
Yeah, that's a copy of a masterwork by an artist named Mabel Alvarez. She was born in Hawaii in the, I think, early 1890s. She died in 1980 something, and she painted the picture. I guess you can't really show it, but so I've been copying that. I've been working very diligently to try to copy that picture. It's part of a class that I'm taking at Rice in the evenings because I don't have any formal artistic training. I just picked up a paint set about a year and a half ago and started painting, and I haven't stopped. So I've been knocking one out, every few weeks. It's just what I do. I'm a curious character. What can I say?
That's actually a remarkable trait. I mean, you guys can't see it, the ones that's watching, but I had no idea that Leonard you only did this for a year and a half, because it looks pretty darn amazing. So, your paintings.
Yeah, I am some kind of mutant, I guess.
Yeah. I would say in some ways that's not a bad thing. So, anything else that interesting that you do that's not so conventional?
Not conventional.
Yeah, why not?
I build like little electronic equipment. I mean, well, you and I have been working on that RadSat. Did you tell your audience about the?
No, since I'm not sure if that's something I would like to disclose openly on the air here. So, but you yourself work on.
You're going to be like, well, what is that? What is this?
So, hey, before I went on break, I was actually going to talk about something weird. So my family, this gets kind of personal. For me, in terms of the strange, so to say, the supernatural world, and I don't think this is not something I've disclosed on air before, but I've told enough people. So, honestly, I have believed in that that sphere, or whatever you call it, the unexplainable, from a very early age. Primarily because my mom, or maybe it's both my parents, have informed me of what happened when I was about 2 years old. Long story short is that I'll just tell you the story. So why not? This doesn't take very long. Yeah, you must. Everybody's hearing it. Leonard, you're hearing it. So essentially, what happened was this was in China. So I was born over there, and my grandma, she was I was at her village, and she, I frequently went to my grandparents' villages to visit. So I was 2, right? So I didn't know what was going on. So she put me in this cart. She was wheeling me around, and there's this river. There's this pretty deep river that's right next to the trail. So, and there's a hill. So she went, and I was in this metal cart, and she went to grab something or like tie her shoes or something. So she didn't pay attention. and for like a few seconds, and then this cart rolled down the hill. She ran after it, but it was too late, and it basically rolled into the river. This metal cart with me inside of it. And of course, I had no idea what was happening. I don't even remember this. This is just what people tell me, right? In my family. So she goes and she's desperate, and somehow this whole thing is not sinking. It's just floating, and I am alive. And she got the cart and got back on dry ground. But it was really strange, and I was told when I was a kid that by my mom that, hey, the so and so, who, by the way, I never remember the name, but anyways, it's one of my dead ancestors. So my mom would tell me that she was the one who saved you, since otherwise, how can we explain this? You could have died. You would have died. So,
Wow.
and I've been told that story a bunch of times, and I'm like, okay, I guess I mean, I'm sure that incident happened. Why would you make up a story like that? And the same lady, by the way, who I really wish I could remember what the name is, but anyways, it almost acted like a guardian angel, protective spirit in our family, because there was a uncle of mine. He used to run a business, and he would need to travel, and there were a couple instances where he could have gotten on a plane or like a bus or a train or something, and there was an accident. So, but he always had like a dream beforehand where he was told not to, say not to take the plane the next day. And then guess what? He listened, and then something did happen with, say, that flight. So, and I was informed that, hey, it's the same entity who's protecting him, and
Well, yeah.
so, and I'm like, wow, at least 2 lives, mine and this uncle of mine, were saved. So I've always been rather grateful for the entities that's at least the good ones that's beyond our natural world. So, anyways, that's my personal story here, which I've yet to reveal to the public until now. So, guess now everybody knows.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean,
Hey,
now,
I just remembered. I actually think my house might be haunted because I keep hearing some kind of noise, like at night, and it does kind of freak me out a little bit.
did you go on?
Well, it's like some kind of squeaking sound, like I have a 2-story house, and the upstairs, if you walk on the floor, the subfloor pieces of wood will kind of like squeak, and a lot of times I just hear that, and I'm just I just live here by myself, and so it's a little bit freaky, but I'm just I guess I'm all right. And
so
I forgot about that.
you hear the squeaky sounds from upstairs as if somebody was stepping on the floor.
Yes, or like somebody was standing stationary and moving around a little bit.
Huh.
Like that. Huh.
That's interesting. Yeah, I can see why that's scary. Do you ever go upstairs and look around and see if there's anything there?
Well, I mean, I sleep upstairs, so there's nothing there.
Okay.
So, but I mean, it's I'm on alert for like something paranormal going on. I'm always open to that, but I don't know what the explanation is. My daughter was here over the summer, and she couldn't get into the house one time because there was a bat in the garage, and she was freaked out by that. So there's like bats that are around here, and
there's bats and ghosts in your house. Wow.
Bats, ghosts.
That sounds really spooky. So,
Yeah.
but oh wow. That's interesting. I mean, if you set up something, I don't know, maybe you could record the sound and see if there's, I don't know. I mean, you could do a scientific experiment on figuring out what the cause is, I suppose.
I suppose.
Yeah. But I myself have yet to experience that. Maybe I haven't lived anywhere that's especially old or something happened. But Leonard, thank you for your time. We are unfortunately out of time here on the show. But
Oh no, really?
yes, I'm sorry for the mishap. Hey, I tell you what, we'll bring you back on. Let me talk to you, and in person, we'll figure out and can bring you back on, talk about something else.
Okay.
So, don't be disappointed. All right. Okay. So for everybody else, and really, thank you for listening. This is SG2 on Space. Before I depart, I gotta give a big shout out for Jonathan Norman, who's of the Action Squad. He's apparently went to the U.S. Open for bowling. An Action Squad, by the way, is anybody who the core group of Action One Media Group. All right. So Jonathan Norman here, great. All right, so follow me, facebook.com/The Shen Show. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for SG2 on Space. Support me on patreon.com/SG2 on Space. And check out Action One Media Group. Any of these, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatnot, all right? So, last but not least, I will end with the famous lines. If you watch my other episodes, you know what they are. All right. I will just say it. Look up because you never know what you will see. Take care.
Peace, it's Brother Atum Ra, and you tuned in to Action One Network.